This is the DTV Digest, the podcast that brings you news and reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema. And now, here's your host, Mike Parkin.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the DTV Digest, the podcast which brings you reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema and instead went straight to DVD, Blu-ray and streaming media. I'm your host, Mike Parkin, and joining me this week is Richard Hawes.
Hello everybody.
So this week it is our foursome threesome, as Rich put it a few minutes ago. So all three of the things we're going to be talking about tonight are linked to Norse mythology, and especially Thor and Loki. So we're going to kick off with the film Valhalla. What's its full title, Rich?
Well, Valhalla is its original title, but it's being released here as Valhalla, Legend of Thor.
Of course. Then our short shot is Odin's Nine, which is a, what would you call it, a fan film?
Yeah, it's Rise of Odin's Nine. It's a prequel to a prequel of based on the comic book The Mask.
Indeed.
For a short film that was called Rise of the Mask, which was the prequel to the short film. Sorry, I'm going into too much depth there.
We'll get into it later, and then we're going to wind off with our DTV Throwback, which is VIKINGDom, which has got the unlikely trio of Jon Foo, Dominic Purcell, and Craig Fairbrass. So that's going to be really, really interesting to talk about later on. But in the meantime, let's crack on. Okay, so our first review is Valhalla, Legend of Thor, as its UK title. Young Roskva has always yearned for an adventure away from the small farm her parents run. One stormy evening, her family is visited by the gods Thor and Loki, who demand hospitality for the night. When Roskva's brother Tjalf inadvertently gets on the wrong side of Thor, he is indentured into servitude in Asgard, and Roskva stows away with them on their journey. Now, this has been sort of like, marketed in the UK as being about Thor, the Legend of Thor, and all the rest of it. But our sort of entry point here is this young girl, Roskva, who, when we first meet her, she's sort of praying to the gods with a stone column that she's built, and I was really unsure to begin with how this film was going to go, but then when you get the arrival of Thor and Loki, I thought, okay, this is definitely got something interesting going, and we do get sort of a more in-depth look at the sort of the legends, surrounding the sort of thing that Marvel has kind of cherry-picked from. Yes,
absolutely. And a very different take on the character, that we're all familiar with because of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's not a very nice guy, really. In the first of the Marvel Thor movies, he kind of has that short he's a bit useless, and then he becomes a hero sort of journey. But in this one, he does have a similar kind of journey, but in a very different sort of setting, very different environment. This is not colourful Asgard and whatever. This is very down and dirty, very much Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so it's definitely, it hasn't got that sort of sheen that the Marvel sort of version has. This is sort of very much, sort of grit and sawdust, and animal skins everywhere and that sort of thing.
Yeah, even the gods, like they're the gods and they're up there and sort of enjoying themselves, but it looks really rather pathetic a lot of the time. It's not, they're all fighting and just getting drunk, and they're a bit useless, and they're not grand figures. They're mostly unappealing. Thor and Loki are an interesting pair. Loki doesn't do as much, mischief as we might expect him to do, but he, at the start of the film, there is a key sort of bit of misleading that he does, which sets the plot in motion.
It does, but as you say, it's very difficult to comprehend why he does it. Does he do it just because he can, and he's that way inclined, just to piss everyone off, or was there some sort of hidden motive behind doing it? It's it's
it doesn't really.
strange.
No, it doesn't really go anywhere, does it? In terms of motivation, like you say, Chiel V, I think is I can't pronounce it. I mean, it sounds completely different in the movie, which is Danish, by the way. This is a subtitled Danish release. The boy Chiel V makes this mistake that he does basically the thing that Thor told him not to do because Loki told him to, and or influenced him to, a bit like devil on the shoulder kind of thing. Played to his dreams and stuff. And he is the lead and he goes off on this journey. Thor says, right, you've got to come with us because you caused this problem. And his younger sister tags along. And what I didn't realise at the time was that the boy was going to be largely a MacGuffin. I mean, he doesn't do anything in the movie. He doesn't really serve any major purpose apart from the fact that he causes the thing to happen, which then, brings the girl along for the ride. Even later on, he's only really there to be rescued.
Yeah, he's the damsel in distress, basically. Isn't he?
Now, this is based on a comic book, which was previously filmed as an animated film in 1986. I'd be interested to see. I've been trying to find a copy, but I'd be interested to see that original adaptation, to see how the story played out there, whether they switched it more to the sort of female character this time, or whether that was always part of it. I don't know. That's quite interesting. But I thought the performances, jumping over to a different aspect of the film, I thought the performances all round were really good. Thor is kind of much more relatable here. Yep. He's mostly not a nice guy. There's this he doesn't treat the kids very well, but then him and Loki have got this giant who in the film is. I mean, there's giants in the film who are not giants at all. They just look like regular people,
regular guys.
But there's this one. He's mute, and sort of mentally disabled or whatever it is, and they treat him very poorly. It's not very nice. They call him a simpleton and stuff, and he ends up being a character who Rushka
protector.
He becomes a protector and a particular sort of companion for Rushka's character. So he, even though he's silent, he's ever present throughout the story and plays a big role in sort of the humanity of the story, really. But Thor is a bit of a bully, and Loki's kind of a bit manipulative and again can be quite bullying, but mostly is in the background. But yeah, I did like the portrayal of Thor by what was his name? Roland Moller.
Yeah, Roland Moller. Yeah, and I'm sure I've come across this thing before. He goes to the giant's cave to get back the boy, and he's challenged to these 3 challenges, and I'm sure I've come across these before. The thing with the horn, the horn of plenty or whatever. This sort of never-ending or sort of bottomless drink and that sort of thing. And it really does sort of ring bells. I'm thinking, I've definitely come across this somewhere. I don't know where though.
Well, it's because it's all taken from the Norse mythology. You wonder how many sort of elements have been adapted, as we'll come to with other films using these elements. But Mjolnir's in there and stuff, and so playing
the bridge, the bridge
Bifrost, the Bifrost and stuff, which makes you realise how much they actually in Marvel's version of Thor, how much they took and kept, and sort of were quite in a way it's quite faithful, really. Surprisingly so. But so this is quite a dark. It's a kids' film, basically. It's a 12-rated family film.
It's one of those sort of grown-up kid films, you know what I mean? And funny enough, the film it reminded me of a lot was the animated film Spirited Away.
Oh yeah, okay.
Mainly because sort of the girl Roskva finds herself in this sort of in servitude sort of situation and has to kind of make the best of it. And I was sort of reminded of that film. They sort of, for some small reason, but yeah, it sort of resonated. But I really like the look of this. The wolf as well. The whole thing with the wolf, I thought was really well done.
Fenrir, I think. It's
right, yeah.
It's another thing with Kung Fury, the short film. In that one they go to Asgard or whatever it is, and Thor turns up in that version. Thor is like a giant, but in that one, a woman, it's a spoof, but a woman character rides in on a wolf, which obviously must be the same thing. That must have come from the same idea, which I just thought was a random thing they threw in there. But exactly. So no, that's an actual part of the mythology. This giant wolf that's going to just get bigger and bigger and potentially destroy the world, which is the sort of the crux of this. They haven't got to try and stop a big beam of light from shining down and destroying the world. They've got to stop a big wolf from eating it, basically. Which is quite an interesting concept. But there's one like big battle at the end where it's sort of like proper Lord of the Rings, but on a budget, like lower budget. But this, the quality of the film is really good. The scenery is amazing.
I was about to say the locations they have are just like jaw-dropping.
Yeah,
it really is good. Now, this was directed by Fenna Ahmad, who we've covered before with his film Darkland.
Oh, was that? Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, that's a very different film, isn't it?
It is a very different film. So, the one where about the doctor.
Yeah, who becomes a motorcycle riding vigilante.
Vigilante, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So, we already were aware of his action chops, just as it were. But
this is the first film. So this is the film he made after that. So he was the writer and director of Darkland in 2017, and then did this 2 years later. That's really interesting. I didn't pick up on that because they say you couldn't get two films, much more different, really. And I want to go back to the casting again. The young girl in the lead, who was Ruspa, Cecilia Lafredo. Yeah, she was really good. She got amazing eyes.
Yeah,
she's got these big blue eyes. Really captivating. Very, very strong central performance. She's the one who goes on the sort of bigger journey, and her brother's quite useless, but she's like becomes the central character. It's as you say, the film opens with her, and there's like kind of a bookending kind of thing they do with that. But I wasn't expecting that she was going to take pride of place in the story. I just naturally thought it was going to be the boy, in a full-on Luke Skywalker kind of adventure. He's even got sort of Darth Vader sort of whispering in his ear or whatever it is. I don't know. It's not trying to lure him to the dark side, but because he goes to the giants and stuff, and they're sort of like, oh, come on, because at every point in the story they're like, come on, you want to be big and strong, don't you? Come on, you've just got to do this. And he's like, yeah, all right, because he does it the second time because it worked out so well the first time.
Absolutely, yeah, why not? Yeah, I'm sure these guys aren't lying to me.
Oh, it's well worth it. It's definitely well worth seeing.
I think so. It's one of those sort of slightly grown up sort of kids movies that you get every now and again. It doesn't necessarily pander to a young audience. It just sort of tells it as it is. It just happens to have kids in the central roles.
Yeah, there's a big battle scene with lots of people getting sliced up, but it's mostly bloodless.
Yeah.
There's a couple of living. Now, there was one scene I wanted to query with you, and that's the scene where it goes all purple and blue and stuff. Are they tripping out?
Oh yeah, the whole bit in the forest, which was absolutely beautifully filmed. Yeah, it really is.
But I kind of got the
mushrooms.
Yeah, I got that kind of impression that it was like they're out in the wild, they're trying all these things, and they end up tripping out, which I thought, oh, that's an interesting thing to put in a kids' film.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, well, it's Danish, I guess, but
yeah.
sorry, Denmark. But it's a very strange sequence, but it is absolutely beautifully filmed. Yeah, that whole thing, where she's staring at the moss and sort of things growing and stuff. Really, really well done. Okay, so scores on the doors for Valhalla.
I'm gonna go for a top end 7 out of 10 on this one.
Yep, definitely a 7 for me. I think it starts a bit slow, but eventually, and I think to begin with, I'm thinking low budget, but eventually, when the gods turn up, I was certainly getting into it more. I really enjoyed the characters. So yeah, this is definitely worth checking out. It's a 7 out of 10 from me and Rich.
And Thor rides a giant goat.
Oh yeah, that's something we haven't come across before. So yeah, he's got a giant goat which he can chop the leg off as long as you don't break any bones. He can fix it the next day.
Yeah, bring it back to life. He can eat it and then bring it back to life.
Really, really interesting little tidbit that. Anyway, 7 out of 10 for Valhalla. Our short shot this week is The Rise of Odin's Nine, The Mask. In this one, 9 disgraced warriors are cursed with eternal life and given a mission by Odin to capture Loki and bring him before him. Okay, so this is another sort of fan film based on the idea of The Mask. The Mask, the Jim Carrey movie, which was supposed to belong to Loki, which is the trickster, obviously, and we've already had at least one short, haven't we, where we had 2 guys fighting on a beach over the mask.
Yeah.
That was one of those, wasn't it?
So they made a short film called Revenge of the Mask, which was bringing back the Dark Horse Comics character in a much darker fashion than the Jim Carrey movie from the 90s.
Yeah.
And Rise of the Mask was the prequel, which showed how the mask, in its case, ended up, getting into people's possession and stuff. And this is now a prequel to that prequel short, expanding on the story even more, telling of basically the creation of the mask.
Indeed. So this starts, I have to say, brilliantly, with a really, really good sort of battle sequence in a forest. It's it's sometimes very difficult to pull off on a limited budget because it can sort of end up looking a bit cosplayish. But this doesn't, and it's partly down to the costumes. The sort of main character looks great, sort of stripped to the waist, sort of bloodied and sort of war paint and stuff. And the camera does a really good job of sort of, tracking the action, sort of running through the forest, being attacked. It looks great. It's a superb sequence to start things off and to sort of set up the idea of these guys being doomed for eternity. It sort of loses its way a little bit after that for me. Things sort of happen but don't happen, and then it's like, well, okay, it's sort of a bit of a non-event, but it does sort of perk up again towards the end. How did you find this one, Rich?
I think I see where you're coming from. I mean, the opening scene it's that sort of guy ploughing through everyone, and he gets made immortal, I believe, at the end of there, and that's when the credits actually kick in at that point. And he is leader of, or at least a part of, this team of warriors that Odin has put together. So that's why they're called Odin's Nine. And they are sent to find and take down Loki, who appears later, because it's a mask kind of tied in thing. He's like in full on green suit kind of thing. And it did look a bit cheap. And some of the costumes and stuff were, I mean, especially the beards, like the stuck-on beards, which look like one of the Jehovah's Witness, propaganda films that they make, really, made on a very tight budget kind of stuff, which brings it down a bit. But the quality of the action was good, and when it gets back to the beach for the finale, which again sort of leads into the Rise of the Mask short. The cinematography and everything's much stronger there. There's not such an emphasis on costume stuff. The visual effects are not great, but they're quite limited. They're not used a huge amount. So yeah, it's more about for me, the strongest part is the daylight cinematography bits rather than the sort of nighttime gathering. I quite like the way the plot went with misleading Loki.
Yes.
What they were trying to do there. I thought that was quite fun, and how they then later revealed what they were actually up to and stuff like that. It's a 35-minute film. I didn't find it dragged too much. So slightly let down by the low budget and not being able to reach some of the heights, but well worth a look, I thought. And good tie-in for the rest of the series. There's another film, Revenge of the Mask 2, which was made before this, which had like Dean Cain and Nathan Jones in it. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to see that before Dark Horse had it pulled from YouTube. So still hoping that will come out again at some point.
It is an interesting one, this, and I do like the idea of sort of taking the idea of the mask and moving away from Jim Carrey. I think that does sort of make it quite interesting, and having a sort of more dark and sinister sort of origin sort of story for the whole thing. There's a really good sort of Easter egg bit at the end, sort of slight post-credit sequence when we sort of jump forward to a museum sort of in present day, and some of the artifacts that get panned around I thought were really good, like the destroyed video machine. I thought that was that was a really nice touch. So I like where they're sort of going with this. I think it did sort of drag just a bit. But the fact there's one bit where they go, oh yeah, we had to sacrifice what's her name, because she had a pure heart, so he needed her heart. Which is like, okay, fine, But it was pretty decent, and I think it's an improvement on the previous one anyway. That's for sure.
Now we've got Loki, as we mentioned, in his sort of big green sort of cosplayish costume thing, but we've also got Thor, who appears very briefly, and he's the most he's not a particularly striking Thor. he appears in like one quick moment basically,
very quick moment,
and he's like let's just be fair. I mean, he's quite a big bloke. Not particularly handsome. Not saying that you have to be, but compared to some of the Chris Hemsworth and the Roland,
they've gone for
all that guys.
The costume.
It's just like, they could have got someone more impressive, to be Thor, God of Thunder. He's such a powerful character, and they just kind of get, oh yeah, you can do it.
Yeah.
Which was a bit of a letdown.
It's almost as if they went, well, the suit's extra large. Who have we got?
It's probably one of the. I mean, I know there's a load of Thor stuff out there that I haven't seen. There's like the Asylum did a film, and somebody else and whatever. Oh, yeah. But this is probably the least impressive Thor iteration of version of that I've seen. So that was actually quite disappointing. And I've seen The Incredible Hulk.
Oh yeah. The trial of the Incredible Hulk. Yeah. Well, we don't score the shorts anyway, but we do like the look of this. You will find a link to it in the footnotes, so don't forget to check it out. So yeah, indeed, that's it. Rise of Odin's Nine. Go check it out. Our DTV throwback this week is VIKINGDOM. For 10 years, the ex-king Elric has been living peacefully in the forest in isolation. However, when the god Thor starts rounding up artifacts which will make him invincible and able to rule the world, Elric is asked by Frey to embark on a mission to find the one thing that will stop him. The horn of something or other. So he goes off, and so it becomes a man on a mission, or men on a mission movie, as he puts his team together and heads off on this very interesting adventure. Now, I think you mentioned this, Rich, that this was a Malaysian production.
It is.
It's a Malaysian production with a sort of American/English cast. So we've got Dominic Purcell playing Elric, and then we've got Craig Fairbrass playing his sort of number two. I can't remember the name of the character. I'm just going to quickly dig it up. Sven, thank you. So yeah, Craig Fairbrass playing Sven, and then we got Jon Foo, late of the TV series Rush Hour, the TV version, and sort of various other characters sort of banding together on this very perilous journey to stop Thor, who has a very sort of striking look in this one compared to what we just talked about in Odin's Nine, with a very sort of very red beard.
Literally red, properly red.
proper.
Not like ginger red, actually red.
Actually red, yeah. On this mission. Now, the way this film has been produced is that just about every scene is either on a soundstage or green screened, or both, or a mixture of both, which takes a bit of getting used to. There are certain scenes which they just cannot hide the fact that they're on a set. It might be something to do with the quality of the camera they're using. I don't know, but once you get used to that, I fucking love this film. I absolutely did. I thought it was incredibly bold and inventive. There are some very silly moments, obviously, but I was thoroughly entertained by this, Rich.
I'm not sure if I was entertained for different reasons, but I felt.
My tongue was firmly in cheek when I watched this, but for pure entertainment value, for all the good bits and the bad bits, I thought this was great fun.
I will say it's too long, at nearly 2 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I was thinking, I've got to get through this rather than I'm really enjoying it, because it does take itself very seriously.
Yes.
But at the same time, I was thinking, as soon as it started, I was like, I can't believe I haven't watched this yet. So I'm so glad we're finally seeing this now, because it's like, it seems like well overdue. I mean, the cast is great. The problems with it are many, and they have, this is a film that's had a lot of criticism, but it's a bit like Dragon Wars. It's kind of like what's crazy about it is kind of what I love about it, what's interesting about it, what makes it notable, and some of the. So this is a Malaysian film. So the director's Malaysian. It was produced, I believe. It was made in Malaysia, pretending to be Eastern Europe, Europe. So they shot stuff in location in caves and on in sort of arid landscapes, but then they did like color correction or whatever to change it to look all very blue and cold rather than the heat that they were actually filming in. So it was actually a very so you see a lot of scenes with Natasha Maltha's character, who's the obligatory sexy young lady with the knives along for the journey, and they're like supposed to be in like a snowy landscape. It's supposed to be freezing cold, but she's walking around with a bare midriff and not a lot on. So there's like comical bits like that. The other comical thing is some of the costumes. Well, not just Craig Fairbrass, but Craig Fairbrass in particular, who I love. Not a great wig that they put him in.
Well, neither him nor Dominic Purcell have.
No, exactly.
I mean, the thing, when you think of Dominic Purcell, he's usually shaved bald. In just about everything he's in, or has a very short hair. So seeing him, and to be honest, I think he has the worst of the two. Because he looks like Tommy Wiseau of the Room fame.
Well, I was also thinking, they've really tried to go for a Mel Gibson Braveheart kind of thing with him in this. I mean, he did look. I mean, he is. Am I right thinking Dominic Purcell's Australian?
I think so.
And so he seems. I mean, he's big. He's a big, bulky guy. But with that hair and stuff, he did come across to me as kind of a Mel Gibson type, which I thought suited the film all right.
He was born in England.
Was he?
Yeah, but he did move to Australia. You're right.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's this weird thing of so it's a Malaysian film that's been shot in English. There's no Malaysian people, it seems, in the cast. The only Asian in the cast is Jon Foo, who's American, I think, and he's playing a Chinese character is literally. So I'm watching the film and I'm thinking, you know what this reminds me of? It's the Iron Mask that we watched a few episodes ago. It's that same kind of. It's a big, grand, a historical adventure, and they've just thrown stuff in. So this is like a Viking adventure, and they think, well, we need some martial arts action.
Yeah.
So let's introduce a Chinese character to do some big set, which is well done. You know, it's fine. I didn't mind it. And Jon Foo is good.
I thought Jon Foo was very good in this, and I really liked his sort of partnership with Craig Fairbrass's character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that they have this sort of like, sort of jokey, sort of like, sort of partnership going through the film, which I quite enjoyed. Yeah, there's one bit where he's I just need to get his name back. It's called Yang or something. He's rescuing Craig Fairbrass, Will Sven from prison, and he's like going, "Yang good," and he goes, "No, mate, you're fucking great," or something like that.
Quick side note there. I was going to mention this later, but there's a version of this film that was released on YouTube. Not a pirate one, actually released by the studio that made it.
Yeah.
And I watched that scene on there, and he says, "What was it you said?" He said.
You say something, Yang good, or something. He goes, "No, mate, you're fucking great," or something like that. Or...
Yeah, and in this version, he said, "You're flipping great."
Oh, right.
Yeah, so they timed it down. I saw it. It's like it's like 6 minutes shorter, so I think it's been like edited for language and violence. So there is that alternate version out there if you want to watch it with kids. I mean, it's quite full on, this film with its violence. So I don't know exactly how cut that other version is, but I just wanted to mention that as an aside quickly there.
Even this version, there's a scene early on when sort of Thor's minions raid Lindisfarne. And they crucify the abbot, and it is cut really quickly. It's like, blink and you'll miss the scene almost. It's almost as if I went, "Oh, that's a bit too far for this," and I had to sort of trim it down a bit.
Well, they are sticking swords like right through people's heads and stuff. It's not really holding back. They seem to. I mean, the whole aesthetic of the film does seem quite 300 influence. When you get the opening of the movie is like these big titles of like the names coming up with like pictures of them, and it's like hard rock, heavy metal kind of theme that the film's got. And actually, the music gives a real pace to it. I thought that worked helped really well for me. For me, that worked quite nicely. And the other thing to note is that it was made in 3D. So you can get from that some of those big sort of visual effects and stuff that they were trying to do, would play just like the Iron Mask. They would play quite big in 3D. So and it was released in some places in 3D, but I believe over here we can only get the 2D version.
There's a whole sequence which I thought was really interesting where Elric has to go to the underworld to get the horn, and meets his father and this sort of thing. And there's this, the bit where he has to actually get the horn, sorry. And there's just like this sort of
sirens.
The wall of like golden sirens, which I thought was really visually impressive. It does have sort of quite a decent sort of sweeping scope to certain scenes.
And before he gets to them, he has to go through the water with horses, which is a bit random. But there's again, you don't know how many sort of elements of the mythology. I've seen harsh criticisms of this that have said they've got this all wrong. The mythology stuff, or the costumes and everything. It's not it's all a bit all over the place. But I think that's kind of missing the point. You kind of got to go with this as a sort of fun fantasy adventure ride kind of thing. And the problems with it are to be enjoyed, I think, more than anything else, intentional or not. I mean, considering the guy who made this, I don't think he'd ever made anything in the English language before. I think he did a pretty good job. I mean, this is certainly an entertaining film with a good cast, interesting aesthetics to it. Approach it in the right frame of mind, and you'll have a really good time. There's Conan Stevens is Thor in this.
Yes,
and I think he's he's an Australian, but I think he's turned up in multiple things, including probably Game of Thrones. And he's a great Thor. But he's a real nasty Thor. We've never seen Thor as like the proper villain in a movie, so that's really interesting to start. We started out this show with Thor as kind of an anti-hero character, but not a bad guy properly. And in this one, he's just evil. It's just
he is the evil mastermind trying to take over the world, kind of thing.
Yeah.
This one, we do see some other gods in this one as well. We get both Frey and Freya as well, and they have a sort of very elf. So like Lord of the Rings kind of elven look to them, sort of quite effete. Total opposite to what we saw in Valhalla at the beginning of the show, where it's all very sort of down to earth, sort of earthy colours. Sort of Frey is in this sort of long flowing golden, outfit, which quite striking. I thought quite a bit different.
Yeah, they've got is that the sort of yellow?
Yeah.
Sort of, the kind of yellow outfits. Because at the beginning we meet, is that her brother?
Yeah, Frey. It's Frey and Freya, basically.
Okay. Yeah. And so after the opening sort of battle, which I thought was in media res, because of what happens at the opening of the film.
Indeed, yeah.
It's like, but it turns out, oh no, it's actually not that at all. And then we meet, so Dominic Purcell fights a bear.
Yeah.
And to prove how hard he is, and then because he's living out in the wilderness, and Frey comes to get him, sort of a bit like Richard Crenna as Colonel Troutman coming to get Rambo. I mean, even Dominic Purcell's hair as Elric makes him look like Rambo in like, I think it's the third Rambo film I'm thinking of, specifically. So that's quite interesting. But so their costumes are okay. I thought, the Underwater Kingdom stuff with the undead, like you say, they might have been overextending their reach there in a couple of those bits. Has a big climactic battle sequence, which was a lot of fun. Although say it's quite a bit too long. The movie. I will, as a quick aside, I also spotted in the film Ron Smurenberg.
Oh yeah.
And Brian Gibson, who was in the Asian Connection with Steven Seagal. But both of those guys have got a film coming out soon called Englishman in Bangkok. I think it's or English, something like that. Englishman in Bangkok or something. Even though. I think Brian's not, but Brian might be, but Ron Smurenberg definitely isn't. But I don't know what the
English Dogs in Bangkok.
English Dogs, yeah. So I thought that was quite funny because the poster, I think, for that only came out quite recently, just before watching this film, and then to suddenly see both those guys in this movie was quite unexpected. So, because Ron Smurenberg turns up all over the place, and most notably he was in Who Am I with Jackie Chan at the end, but in this film he doesn't really get anything to do. He's probably on the stunt team. The action was all done by an Australian guy whose name I'm afraid I don't know off the top of my head, but the whole stunt team I think was Australian, interestingly enough, even though it's an Asian-made film.
Interesting. Yeah, fight choreography was Jace Lee, I believe, and John Reynolds.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to say. The ending, the climax of the film, is very Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, but no. So I think we're recommending this one, Rich. I certainly.
I think it's got to be seen. Yeah, I think it's well. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't say it's a good film, but in many ways you could say it's a bad film. But it's a very entertaining film. I mean, when else do you don't see many films with Craig Fairbrass playing a guy called Sven, battling his way through sort of Viking territory. I thought that was quite, because basically Craig Fairbrass is Craig Fairbrass, how you see him in everything else. He's like British gangster kind of thing. but he's in this environment. Is that they haven't changed him at all? So which is quite good.
There's a line early on where he's sort of got, when Elric sort of go, no, you don't have to come with me, and he's like, yeah, but I'm a Viking, I'm a Viking through and through, me.
And he's doing all the same sort of effing and blinding.
It might as well say, I'm a gangster, I'm a London gangster, me. It's exactly the same sort of thing, the same emphasis. But yeah, no, this is a lot of fun. I still maintain that Northmen, the Viking saga, is still my favourite sort of entertaining sort of silly Viking movie. But yeah, this is a close second. I think it's definitely worth checking out. It will surprise you. It will surprise you.
We found it on Amazon Prime.
Yep.
You can also buy now. Sorry, I'm going off on one again. The first thing that was striking about this when it started was it comes up with the Universal Pictures logo, and I was thinking, what? Because you see the Universal Pictures logo, and it sets up certain expectations.
Sure.
And this is like proper kind of B movie kind. This is not the high quality movie that like Valhalla was. Yeah. This is quite cheesy. And I was like, why? I don't understand why Universal Pictures picked this up. So that was quite odd. Anyway, so the version that we saw was like an hour and 55 minutes, which is on Amazon. I think that's the same version that was on DVD. Also did come out on Blu-ray as well. But you can find, as the aforementioned edited version, on YouTube. So it's not a pirate. It was uploaded by the filmmakers Crew Studios. And that's 1 hour 48 minutes. Great looking copy. Looks probably better than the version that I watched on Amazon, in my view. But say it does have that sort of edited for television kind of element to it. Yeah, well worth checking out. And there's a 23-minute making of called The Art of Vikingdom, which was originally released on the Blu-ray, but you can also watch that on YouTube in 3 parts. That's well worth a look to sort of see, find out a bit more about the behind the scenes making of the film.
And that's the end of this week's show. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Rich, for joining me on this little saga of ours through the latest Viking and Norse god mythology.
I will join you on any quest, sir.
And to you out there, thank you for listening, and tune in again soon.
Thank you for listening to the DTV Digest. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tune in again next time.